This is Mrs. Naslund, and today we'll be doing Unit 6, Lesson 1, Measured Length and Distance. Our learning targets for today are, I can explore the system of metric units of length or distance. Our second learning target is, I can estimate and measure length and distance using metric units. And our third learning target is, I can choose appropriate units for measuring. So, with that being said, here are some of the vocab words we'll be discussing today. Millimeter, centimeter, decimeter, meter, kilometer, prefixes, and the metric system. This whole unit will be focusing on the metric system. So let's go ahead and get started. Parts of a meter. So this is what we call a meter strip, and we're going to use this to answer these different questions. And I want you to notice MM stands for millimeter, CM stands for centimeter, DM stands for decimeter, and M stands for 1 meter. And so we're going to use this to help answer the questions below. So the first question says, find 1 millimeter on your strip. What objects are about 1 millimeter wide? So millimeter, this is 10. There's 10 little lines. So this little dot right here is 1 milliliter. And the question is, millimeter. The question is, what objects are about 1 millimeter wide? Well, some examples would be the tip of your pencil, the head of a nail, or even the width of a string. It's a very small amount. All right. Now it says, find 1 centimeter on your strip. So I'm going to find 1 centimeter. And I want to know how many millimeters are in 1 centimeter. So I find my 1 centimeter and I look up and there are 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. Good. Now, what objects are about 1 centimeter wide? Go ahead and think about that for a second. What objects are about 1 centimeter wide? This big. Some of the objects you could have come up with are your pinky finger, a marker, small marker, or a piece of chalk. Now, number 4. Find 1 decimeter on your strip. How many centimeters are in 1 decimeter? So find my decimeter, and you want to know how many centimeters are in there. So I'm going to look right up, and there are 10 centimeters that make up 1 decimeter. Now, this last question says, this is 1 meter that has been folded into decimeters to fit the page. So it's been folded. And we have to figure out how many decimeters are in 1 meter. So each of these is 1 meter long, and we want to figure out how many decimeters there are. So let's count the number of times it was folded. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 decimeters in 1 meter. All right, 10 decimeters in 1 meter. And you'll see, so that means that there is 10 of these put together to make 1 meter. All right, so that just gives us some perspective about how big these measurements are. And that's going to help us as we move on and start talking about how to move between these different measurement systems. All right, so on this page, we're going to look at this little chart here, units of length, and we'll see that meter is right in the middle. And then we break off into our decimeters, our centimeters, and our millimeters, like we were looking at earlier. But if we go this way, we have decameters, hectometers, and kilometers. Okay, so we look at this chart, and we want to figure out how do the lengths of the different units relate to each other. And I want you to look here, and basically we'll start with meter. And when we go this way, a decimeter is 10 times smaller than a meter. A centimeter is 10 times 10 times 10 times 10 smaller than. Okay, so you're noticing that it's getting smaller, right? Each time they're getting 10 times smaller from each other. When we go this way, they get 10 times larger. So this is, a decameter is 10 times larger than a meter. It is 10 times 10, or 100, if we multiply those out, times larger than the meter, or the hectometer is 10 times 10, or 100 times larger than the meter. And in this case, we've got 10 times 10 times 10, which is 1,000 times larger than the meter. So the kilometer is 1,000 times larger. So it goes up, it either goes up by 10 or multiples of 10, or down by multiples of 10, depending on which way you go on the chart. All right, now this is another conversion chart, and we're going to give each person a copy of this because this is the one that I think is the easiest for people to understand. But this base unit, this is where our meter was, okay? This is always our meter right here in the middle in this case. And I want you to notice that we still have our decimeter, our centimeter, our millimeter. These beginning parts, these are the prefixes. They're the beginning of the word, but they're all going to end in meter in this case. And same going up, decameter, hectometer, kilometer. Eventually we're going to change these units, but for now we're going to start with meters. Now I want you to read these really carefully. It says to convert to a smaller unit, move the decimal point to the right or multiply. So when we're trying to make it smaller, we're going to move the decimal point to the right, and we're going to move it based on the number of steps we have to take. So if we have to take 1, 2, 3 steps, let's say we're going from meter to millimeters, we're going to move it 3 steps over. If we're converting to a larger number, we're going to move it to the left. So if it was like 1,000 meters and I was going this direction, I would go 1, 2, 3. I would move my decimal point 3 spots to the left. So we're going to practice that with these numbers down here. And once you get how to use this chart, it's really quick, it's easy, and you can even memorize this chart, and then you would know how to convert in the metric system quickly and easily in your head. So let's start this one. How many meters are in 1 kilometer? So first off, I've got to figure out where kilometers are. And they're way up here. Okay, I've got 1 kilometer. I'm going to write my 1, and I'm going to put the decimal behind it. Because remember, when we write a regular number, the decimal point goes behind it. And I want to go to meters, from kilometers to meters. And remember, our base unit here is meters. Okay, so I'm at 1. And I'm going to figure out how many decimal places I need to move. And I'm going to have to go towards the right because my number is going down the chart, which means it's getting smaller. So I'm going to start here and figure out how many steps I need to go down. 1, 2, 3 steps. So I'm going to move my decimal point 1, 2, 3 points. And I fill zeros into all of those. Okay, so I know that 1 kilometer is the same as 1,000 meters. Okay, because all I did is I moved that decimal point 1, 2, 3. It's 1,000 meters. Okay, let's try another one. Let's try this one. It says, how many millimeters are in 1 meter? How many millimeters are in 1 meter? So I find my meter is my middle one. I only have 1 millimeter, and I want to know millimeters. So way down here. So I'm going to count my steps. 1, 2, 3. So remember my decimal point, if I'm at a whole number, is right here. I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3. I fill those in with zeros. So I have a total of 1,000 millimeters are in 1 meter. And again, all I had to do is count my steps. Okay, this one. How many centimeters are in 1 meter? So I figure out where centimeters are, right here, centi. I figure out where my meters are, again, right in the middle, and I count my steps. So let me write this out. I have my 1, I'm going to count my steps. 1, 2, 2 steps. So I get to move my decimal point. 1, 2. So how many centimeters are in 1 meter? 100 centimeters are in 1 meter. So this one says, what makes the metric system easy to understand? What do you think? Think about that for a second. Well, the answer is everything is multiplied by 10 or grouped in units of 10, and multiplying by 10 is easy to do. Okay, so all I am doing is I'm moving by sets of 10 or multiples of 10, and that's why it's easy to calculate and figure out for yourself. All right, great work. All right, for this next exercise, we're going to decide which unit is appropriate to measure different things. So let's go ahead and look at the first one here. This person is measuring someone's height. And I want you to think, what makes the most sense? So look at our different options: kilometers, hectometers, decameters, meters, decimeters, centimeters, and millimeters. And I want you to think about, what one do you think would be the correct one? And I'm going to explain my reasoning. I'm going to say centimeters is the correct one. And let me explain you why I think centimeters is the best way to measure. We won't want to do it by whole meters, the middle one here, or anything bigger than a whole meter, because at that point everyone's going to be really close to the same height. Almost everyone's going to fall into that category because it's a bigger space, and so almost everyone in the class would be the same height if we did meters. So we need something smaller. So we move right on down the line here, and let's just go down to millimeters. Okay, why not be really, 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 really precise and do millimeters? And the reason for that one is that if we did it in millimeters, you would be very precise, but the numbers would be really, really, really big because there'd be a lot of millimeters to measure one person. And so it's almost too many numbers to make it easy for people to read. And how about decimeters? Well, in decimeters, you could do it, but it would also be less precise than centimeters, okay? So this one is the more accurate one. This is almost too small, but again, with decimeters, kind of like that meter thing, that you're not going to be quite as close, and it wouldn't be as good of a measurement. So I want you to go ahead and think, look at the coin here, and which one do you think would be a good choice for the coin? Go ahead and pause the video and let me know what you're thinking. All right, if you said millimeters, right on, because a coin is a much smaller space to be measured, and millimeters is a much more accurate way to measure a small thing. So a millimeter would be perfect for measuring a coin. How about a pencil? What would be a good measurement for a pencil? Pause your video and think about that for a second. All right, and there could be a couple of answers. I would say that for a pencil, both millimeters and centimeters would be good. You're going to be pretty accurate. Obviously, millimeters are going to be really accurate, but centimeters is going to be pretty close as well. How about the height from the door to a doorknob, or from the bottom of a door to a doorknob? What do we think we could do for that one? I'm going to say the centimeter or the decimeter. Probably not millimeters, because again, that number is going to get too big, and meters wouldn't be very accurate. So I think the centimeter or decimeter would be great. How about a really large space from Chicago to New York? What would make the most sense there? Yeah, kilometers, right? This is a huge distance. Okay, we're going miles and miles and miles and miles. So kilometers would be a great way to measure it. How about around a track? What do you think we would do to measure around a track, or partially around a track? Meters. Meters would be good. If you get too big, you're not going to be able to measure accurately, but if you don't want to have it be a huge number and have one of these smaller ones, so meter would be great. How about number 17? What could we do with there? So this is measuring from the bottom of a pole vault to the top of a pole vault. Decimeters or meters? You won't want to get much bigger than that, because if you get much bigger, you're going to have to skip a bunch of numbers. It wouldn't be very accurate. And if you get much smaller, the number would be huge and hard to read. How about from the front step to the front of your door? You said meter, right on. Again, we don't want to go too little or too big, okay, but meters is just a great amount to measure. And knowing exactly which one to use is a hard thing to know. But the idea is, if it's a really small thing, you're going to go really accurate, like millimeters. If it's really huge, you're going to go kilometers. If it's somewhere in the middle, then you'll go around that meter range. And that should help you kind of determine which one is which. All right, so that'll wrap up today's lesson. We introduced the metric system and how to move from one number to the next. You'll get some practice on that in your homework and remembering today. Great work.